Okay, what we have playing right now is one of our jurors, Kelly DeLay. He does this thing called the Clouds 365 project, where he's basically taking a picture of the sky like every day for, I think he's going on 5 or 6 years now. The project's going to come to a close this summer, so I had asked him if we could just play some footage of what he's kind of collected of skies around Frisco. So he provided this for us. It's going to go for a couple more minutes, and we're going to turn the lights on, and I'll more formally welcome you. Do you guys want to tune in? We've got more seating over here, more seating over on the right side. I think there's still some seating up there at the back. Yes.
Let's say I had a friend from the East Coast tell me one time that one of the things that she noticed about Texas is the size of the land was so flat, that the skies were really the interesting part because it was part of our landscape, really.
Yes.
So it's really interesting that, he's noticing how the skies change and things like that.
And he's a Frisco resident. I think some of this footage obviously is not from Frisco.
Obviously.
The mountains, we don't have that.
Mountains, really?
But the majority of his project has been skies like around Frisco. So, but he's just interested in skies in general. And he's actually not with us because he was on a storm chasing venture these past couple of days. So we were glad at least to have some of his footage. But I grew up in San Diego, and so for me, the skies here in Texas, that's a good trade-off for the ocean. I mean, I love the ocean, but I've experienced that, but coming to Texas, I feel like the clouds, I like the sky here, You don't get that in San Diego or on the East Coast. That's true. All right, I think I'm going to go ahead and put this to a pause. I think most people are in here. David Burt, you want to hit the light? Well, welcome. Now that I can see more of your faces, come on in, get a seat. If you don't have one, there's plenty of seating. It's my pleasure to welcome you on behalf of Frisco Arts. I'm Paige Prater. If I haven't met you before. I'm the director of marketing and exhibits here, and I was very excited to have an all photography show. This is, I think, the second year in a row that we've done an all photography show. Last year the theme was urban footprint. This year the theme is keep looking up. So we kind of just let photographers, choose however they wanted to, define that with their creative work. And I was very pleased with the variety of approaches that photographers took to run with that theme. So I'm also very excited to have 3 panelists with us tonight. They're all artists in the show. So we have Daniel Curry on right there, like right, left, which way, And then we have Joseph Browning and J.D. Smith. So I'm very thankful to have them. We're going to hear from them in a few minutes. But before we get started, I would also like to invite Ryan Hurtado with FC Dallas. They're a local soccer team, and he has a little something for photographers too. So.
Hey there, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I'll be brief. As myself, art minor, focused in photography. So we've come up with a cool idea of ways to kind of work everyone into soccer. And so what we're doing now is we've actually sectioned off 100 seats per match now moving forward, where people can actually go down on the field, that's just if they were media or anybody else, and actually get to shoot our matches. And so I have my colleague out in the front. His name's Jordan. If you guys care for any information, he's got some stuff for you guys. And then as well, even too, if you guys want to come out to your guys' first game, just get signed up with Jordan. He'll provide you guys each with 2 tickets to a match moving forward. So thank you guys so much. Looking forward to the show. And as well, thank you guys as well. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Frank. So art and soccer, they can dovetail, right? Who knew? All right, so without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started. If you guys have other questions or something, that kind of gets raised for you in their answer of some of these premeditated questions that I had for them, feel free to kind of jump in. I want this to kind of be casual and more of a conversation than like a formal, like, what's this, what's that, So feel free, raise your hand. We can do it classroom style. So I think what we'll do is I'll kind of ask the question, we'll kind of get it going, and we'll just kind of go in order. So Danielle, Joseph, JD, and then feel free to say as little or as much as you want, and we'll just kind of go from there. So my first question is, where are you from? How did you get into photography?
I am from this area. I've lived here all my life. I was born in Denton, and then I went to high school in Crum. I don't know if any of y'all know Crum, with a K. And then I actually got into photography in college. I didn't really know about photography as an art form until I got into college at Texas Women's University.
Okay, excellent. How about for you, Joseph?
I grew up in Mesquite, Texas, and went to Dallas Christian School. I was on the yearbook for like 4 years and was the photographer, and then became the staff photographer and chief photographer. And so I went to college at UNT thinking that I would want to do photojournalism, only to be blown away by the art department and totally taken by the variety of things that you could do with art. And I had never ventured outside of photography, and so that really opened up my doors to what could happen, photography and art and how they come mix together.
Very cool. How about for you, J.E.?
Well, I was born in Dallas. I moved out to Snyder, West Texas, which I love, West Texas. I was out there a while and then came back to Denton for high school, then back out to West Texas to Texas Tech, and back here to Dallas and Frisco.
Okay. And when did you pick up the camera?
Well, I did when I was about 13 years old. My mom suggested, hey, there's this photography class out there at the community college. You want to go check it out? And I did. It was black and white photography, darkroom, and I just fell in love with it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
One of our jurors, Irby Pace, he's from Odessa, Texas, and he picked up the camera like when he was 16 and started doing stuff. I kind of wonder if the skies out there are better than here. Anybody know? They are. I haven't studied them. Excellent. All right. So most of you guys studied photography at some level in school. Some of you in college. Some of you, I don't know, was that a high school class or black and white photography?
Mine was all like community-based classes, so
Okay.
it was never any formal training.
Yeah. Excellent. I love that. All right. Who inspires your photography methods or style? I mean, you could just talk like right now. Who's inspiring to you?
Oh gosh. I would say more of like I'm really inspired by personal experience, and then once I'm inspired by something, then I'll go out and find the artists that inspire that.
Okay.
I've always been inspired by Robert Park Harrison. He's the first photographer that I was shown as a student that made me think about photography as an art form, and to be able to see the work that he did and know that you could do that with photography was really amazing to me.
Can you describe a little bit about his work?
He
for those
does
of us who
really
don't know?
fabricated work. He sets up scenes like in a studio. The ones that I saw for the first time was his series called Architect's Brother, and they're these really fantastical scenes where it's almost apocalyptic, like there's lands but it's just dirt, and then he's building these machines to kind of bring the environment back to life, but it's not working.
Interesting.
You just have to see that.
Kinda have to
I don't
see-
know
yeah,
if I'm
pictures
doing
worth 1,000
it
words,
justice.
right?
Yeah.
Good. How about for you, Joseph?
For me, I learned a lot about art when I went to college and at UNT, and for me, I was kind of tired of photography, and so like I wanted to do everything that wasn't photographic, and so I fell in love with like optical artists and fell in love with art that you look at, art as like an object rather than trying to photograph a thing.
Okay.
And so I fell in love with like Bridget Riley and Joseph Albers and their optical painting stuff. But as far as environmental work, I really fell in love with Andy Goldsworthy. He did a lot of work with color photography as well, and how he documents his sculptures that he makes out of land art. He makes temporary sculptures in the environment and then photographs them as a way to say that this is what I've made, but they're all temporary. And fell in love with that idea of like making something that you photograph rather than just photographing a scene. So kind of those two approaches to my photography. It's very environmental, but also something beautiful.
So less portraiture and more
Yeah,
like,
I just
yeah,
can't.
get into it.
I
huh?
can't get into it. I can
No
do
selfies.
it well, but I like to look at different things on the wall.
Okay. How about for you, JD? What inspires you?
Well,
Who?
I've always loved landscape photography and Ansel Adams.
Oh, yeah.
Just the quality of his work with the large format negatives and everything is just so perfectly balanced and clear and sharp. It's amazing, incredible work. And I love outdoor landscape photography.
It's a West Texas thing. I'm telling you what. Since a trip coming on, road trip. Okay. So which type of photography do you guys use? I mean, I know like we're in the age of, you know, digital cameras, iPhones, but then there's hardcore people that are like film only. So I'd be curious as to what your thoughts are on kind of the digital revolution and how you see like some of the software like Photoshop and tweaking photos, you know, how does that fit into your concept of, you know, photographer as artist, and then how much is creative, whatever you want to say about that.
I think it's strange because there's always a big debate about, you know, Photoshop versus the darkroom and film versus digital, and digital is evil, some people believe, you know, and that's valid if that's what they believe. I shoot all digital right now for a couple different reasons. One, because it's less expensive, and that's a big reason. And then also just the convenience of it, being able to take the photographs and then, you know, upload them and work on them that same day. And then I use Photoshop. Obviously, the ones that three of the ones that got in, the color ones here, were all digitally manipulated. And I guess the way I look at that is I see Photoshop just as like a digital darkroom, just like, you know, there are people that montage inside of the black and white darkroom. So I look at it as just another tool that can push that creative concept. Like if that's your concept and that's what you have to do, then find a way to do it.
So it doesn't matter the means, it's more about the end. Can
Yeah.
you achieve what your creative vision was?
Yeah.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah, kind of similar. I've only used digital pretty much the whole time. When you go to art school, they introduce you to all of the giant 4x5 cameras and everything, and they're amazing to work with and so fun. But paying $20 to make one negative come out and then maybe it being ruined is really hard, especially when you're in college, to like make things work out.
Yeah.
And so digital allows me to take about 300 pictures all in a span of like an hour, and then go into the computer and I use Photoshop and just search through the best images and then pull the best images out and then work on those more. And I feel like digital, the reason why it's stayed and has gotten so much better is because it allows us to take so many more pictures and allow for those moments to be captured when you're limited with film, of how fast you can take the film or how many shots you can get within a roll, and pausing between putting in the roll, and there is that magic of actually being in the darkroom and creating pictures that I still love and still do casually. But if I'm ever seriously working on a project, it always starts digitally, and it may even start with my phone. I mean, iPhones now are as good as my DSLR was when I first started taking photography. I mean, iPhone 5 having 8 megapixels and having a depth of field that is shorter than any of the digital cameras I got before I got a Canon Rebel, and it just blows my mind. And all the apps you can do is almost as good as Photoshop. So I feel like photography is going towards the mobile realm, and being able to share photos and edit photos easily for everyone, I feel is just growing the photography field.
How about for you, Didi? What are
Well,
your thoughts on that?
they brought up some interesting things, I think. Like now everybody is a photographer. Everybody has a phone. So there's a million people taking the same picture about the same place, right? Used to, a photographer would go out, they'd do their work, and it'd be something. But now, everybody, with the digital technology, with being able to edit images, it's amazing the quality that can come off of an iPhone, right? So, well, I do digital, but I used to do black and white photography and darkroom, which I loved. I absolutely loved the technical aspects of photography. I had my own darkroom for years, up through high school. But then I had a family, raised kids. I got out of it for a while, but came back, and I'm a DSLR now with the Canon Rebel, EOS Rebel. And with the 32 gig memory card, I can take like 1 million pictures on that and not have to switch any film out. I don't have to go back, roll in black and white film like I used to. It's just so convenient now.
So one of my questions, and I don't know that this was on here, but what we're discussing makes me wonder, like, how do you guys define a photographer? Like, is there a difference between somebody who just loves snapping pictures on their iPhone and somebody who is serious about it? And how do you guys kind of at least quantify that in your own minds,
I think so. I mean, I think it comes back to the question of snapshot versus fine art. And, there's always been a struggle in the art world accepting photography as an art form. And so I think that when a person goes into taking a photograph with a conceptual reason and they, are taking it for more than just, a snapshot of their food, let's say.
Yeah.
I mean, when there's something behind it, then I think that's a fine art photograph. But I think it is hard with how we're surrounded by photography today. It's everywhere. Like, socially, you can't get away from it. And so I think, like, having galleries and stepping into a museum and taking yourself out of that digital space is really important.
Off Facebook and into the real world, something like that.
Yeah.
I feel similarly, but I feel like if snapshots are taken with the means, like with the concept in mind. I know that there's a lot of photographers who are like, I'm going to go and I want to take pictures of parents feeding their children ice cream, and they'll go different places. And so they'll take snapshots, millions of pictures, and then they'll pick those pictures. And I feel like what it means to be a photographer is really to be able to edit the work, to be able to pick the images that are better than other images. It's not necessarily having, I'm going to take a picture with this apple and orange and it's going to mean life and death, And there's so much of that, right? And like the shadow hitting the orange just at the right time. It doesn't, to me, that doesn't mean anything because I wouldn't know that if I came up and saw it. And so that snapshot can have just as much photographic potential and be just as much of a photographer, especially if it's a good image. I feel like anyone can be a photographer as long as that image is just as quality as an Ansel Adams print, which is really hard to do. So, good luck, but.
Want to add anything, JD?
So yeah, that's a good question. I actually thought about this earlier. I think a photographer, a true photographer, walks through the world framing everything in your mind. And you're looking at the lighting, the angles, when would be a good time to come back to get the best picture from this scene, So I think somebody that actually puts thought into it. I mean, some snapshots turn out awesome.
Yeah.
Right. And that's another thing.
Yeah.
Right place at the right time with the right equipment, which can happen on snapshot. But a true photographer will they'll know I think the environment and what they need to get the type of photo that they want out of it.
So it sounds like you all kind of agree that what differentiates just somebody's tourist, let's say, from a serious photographer is if they have like a concept in mind and they're intentional about what they're doing, whether it's in the editing process or in the original kind of looking for a location and something to shoot.
I think it's an effort thing. I mean, people look at art such as painting as it takes time, or sculpture as like this laborious activity. And even though photography may not be physically laborious unless you're doing large-scale 8x10 collodion prints, that can be a very physical process. But digitally, I feel like the process has to be more intense than just taking the picture for it to, not to count, but for it to be just as good as a painting that took 20 hours to complete, or a sculpture that someone's been working on, for a whole year. It takes just as much thought and time.
Sometimes people get lucky with the snapshot, right? So there's some saying, I can't remember exactly, but if you put 1 million monkeys at a typewriter, they would type out War and Peace, right? If you have 1 million people snapping pictures, you're going to get Ansel Adams quality out of somebody.
Yeah. The odds are.
Yeah.
I see where you're going with that. But yeah, good answers. It sounds like you guys have thought about this. Probably because you're photographers, you're always defending yourself. Yes, Mom, I'm an artist. Let me tell you. Okay, let's see. So I guess the question is, you guys all mostly use digital now, just because of cost and because of the ease of use and all that. Manipulability, is that a word? All right. Do you guys get involved? Do you find yourselves kind of isolated in your hobby, either intentionally, or do you find that there's kind of a good community of photographers? If so, where do you find that community? What would you recommend for people who are like, I want to be a serious photographer and I'm not going to school, but how do I kind of get involved and find out what's going on?
I think the best way, obviously my community, I teach at Texas Women's University, so I'm surrounded by, students and stuff like that all the time. But I think joining organizations or just going to shows is the best way that you can step into that space, and especially if artists are there, and then you can speak to them on that personal level. I think that helps tremendously. But joining, art leagues and things of that nature, and then there's also I think there's a Texas photo class, which is, I think that's what it's called, Texas photo classes, where you can go and learn the basics of your DSLR without having to step into, a college classroom and things like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of different organizations. I mean, there's meetup groups, there's I Heart Texas Photo, there's lots of different organizations. I think if you're wanting to really learn photography on another level, a lot of the community colleges offer really quality classes, taught usually by the same people who teach at the universities, adjuncts that are trying to make it also as a professional artist. Yeah. And so for me, it was a whole nother experience going from almost like an amateur photojournalism setting to that art setting of like framing the picture, what it means to make a photograph. Looking back at the history of photography is really enlightening, as what it means to actually where photography has come from and where it is now, and how all that ties together, and how advertising and all the images that we see daily, how that plays into our idea of what photography is now, and how that separates us as still from artists who are making paintings, because they're like, oh, you take pictures, will you do my senior portraits? And you're like, I would like to, but I don't really want to. But I kind of have to make some money, And so
commercial versus fine art.
And so choosing to do the weddings, and because I'm good at using a camera, but I feel just getting into the community colleges. Because when I made the best work photographically, it was in the classroom setting. It was meeting all those other people who were also interested in that subject. So
y'all are intentional in trying to figure out, how do we frame this?
Very much so.
Very cool. JD, do you
Well, I haven't really been involved lately. I've been out with family the last 25 years. But,
it's a good cause. It's a good cause.
But I'm back into it now. I plan on getting involved in some photography clubs around, like the Herd Museum. They have a photography club, nature photography, and there's a couple meetup groups I found. But I've done most, and I think that's important because you can learn from others and the techniques they use, the software, the filters, whatever they do to enhance that photo. Which that's what I need. I need exposure, and I need to talk to people that actually do this, so I can learn more about it.
Cool. So commercial photography, is that something that you all are okay, it's a necessary evil, or do you just, like you said, Joseph, try to just kind of keep yourself separate from that as a fine art photographer? I'm just kind of curious.
As long as there's advertisements, there's going to be commercial photography.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying you are ready to throw commercial photography out the window. I'm just saying for you personally as an artist, how do you feel? Are you I just want to be a photographer that does it for art and art's sake, or I don't mind mixing the two?
I tried doing portraiture and I tried doing weddings, and found that it very much wasn't for me. I think it's really hard for people that don't know about that fine art world, that how completely different it is from what you want to be doing. They just think you like taking pictures, so you would enjoy photographing their wedding, when it's a totally different ball game. It's not about photographing, it's about posing people and gathering people and getting the right shots. And so for me, I very quickly realized that wasn't what I wanted to do. One of my cousins still makes me take their family photos every year, but she's the only person I'll do it for.
It's for family, right?
Yeah. So that's about where I'm at.
Yeah, totally.
It's not out the window. I feel that commercial photography for me is totally separate than art. I don't make art that reflects my commercial work at all. I know how to use a camera really well, and I'm able to set up situations, and I'm good at composition, and so naturally, portraiture and weddings and all of that comes with that, and it is where a lot of the money is at, and where people are willing. It's like a give and take rather than me making something and hoping that you like it.
Yeah.
And so it makes a lot of, it is money, but
Yeah.
But working on a wedding, I mean, it takes me everything to put myself to finish those pictures, and it's not even taking the pictures is fine. It's like 2 hours. I mean, it could be an 8-hour shoot,
Sure.
and be like, okay, done. But that's like the very beginning,
To the
because
back.
after that, it's like 40 plus hours of editing on top of your day job, on top of hanging out with people, and then so all of that comes before the wedding pictures that you have to edit. Portraits aren't so bad because it's only a smaller group of pictures, but it's not something that I actively search to do. But if people ask me, I'm like, yeah, I can do that.
So keep that in mind, folks.
Yeah.
I know, we have all these emails.
Yeah. How about for you, JD? Do you ever
I have a
venture
day
into
job. I'll
commercial?
stick with art.
Yeah. Nice. That makes it easier.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Very good. All right. What other types do any of you dabble in other art besides photography? If so, what? Or if you don't, is there another type of art that you would like to because of your photography experience?
I do. When I studied in college, I did a minor in bookmaking, and so I work with book arts. I haven't made one since I graduated, just because it's a really intense process, and I have 2 kids right now, and they don't let me do anything, so I can't really.
Scrapbooking might be a good
Yeah, I
idea,
can't
sure.
really do it unless I want like goldfish, glued to my book. But that's what I would say is the closest thing. Like, I love photography. Photography is my main. And then if I do book arts, photography's in it.
Mm-hmm.
So photography is always there for me, just because I see that first.
Mm-hmm.
And then if it needs to be in a book, then I put it into a book, I guess.
Yeah. Very cool. How about for you, Joseph?
For me, like I said before, going to art school was the best thing ever. And I fell in love with painting, which I was petrified of at the beginning. and that's actually what, me painting and figuring out how I could be a photographer and be good at painting and pass this class, I stumbled upon optical art. I started making these gradients with paint and doing a lot of masking. And then I took that thinking, maybe I can do that in photography. And so taking, images of the sky at different times of the sunset, and that getting that gradient color just like I would paint, and trying to put them together in Photoshop like I would paint. And so after that painting class, I love to paint now as a more cathartic thing to do, especially when I can't get out to do the photography that I want when it is only commercial or I'm being, overworked at work and just need a night off. Painting is very, very cathartic. And I also fell in love with printmaking while at school because it's very related to photography and very process-based, and it's all about the print. It's all about that final piece, but you're always working towards the end product, and you're able to edit the colors and how dark the ink is and all of that. It's very hands-on. Reminds me a lot of black and white photography, making the print.
While we're on that note, would you mind explaining, the few pieces that we have out here of your work in the gallery? Can you explain, obviously they look a little bit optical, right? If you look down and you're going, how is this photography? Would you mind explaining your process?
Yeah.
I know, but
Yeah.
they don't.
So mine are the optical art that's the square out in the front lobby and the tall piece with just the lines and then the piece at the end with the circle. And so I take images of the sky at either sunset or sunrise, and I take pictures of the sky looking north, east, south, and west, and I record the times and the date. And then I take those images in Photoshop and layer the two that were taken closest together. So I'll have 11:32 and 11:34, or 7:32 and 7:34 in the morning for the sunrise. And I'll layer the two pictures in Photoshop and take out every other line of maybe an inch or fourth of an inch, so that you can see both of the images at once in a single composition. And so I did that in different designs. In the front, I did it's of a sunset looking east and west, so you get the pink tones and purple tones of the sky turning to night, along with the really bright orange and yellows and all that goes into that as it fades up to the top. And so, and I was interested in how it changed at sunrise and sunset, as well as looking not necessarily east and west, but also north and south. And then the one on the very end with the circle of looking at clouds and how it changed of like when you put clouds have different colors at different times of the day and looking different directions and how that all that light works together and realizing that the sun is the source of light, and so wherever the sun is not, it's going to create that gradient. And putting the pictures together will create a very optical feeling. So that's basically the process of it. I hope that explained it enough.
I just love the idea that like you're kind of in the same place, but you do it east, you do it west, and then it's like at two different times, but they're close to. Cool. So I think the original question before that.
Yeah, what other art form?
Yes.
Okay.
What other art forms do you?
Well, the other art
like
form
to-
I practice is, since I was 13, is I'm a musician.
Oh, okay.
They're not really related, but I am, I guess, an artist with photography and music. I've been playing trombone since I was 13.
Really?
And when I'm 2004, 10 years ago, I formed the Frisco Community Band.
Really? I
Yeah,
didn't
I was
know
the
that. I've
founder.
been wondering the kind of the origins of
Yeah,
that.
so here, that's
Very
me.
cool.
But I've also picked
We'll
up,
talk after.
I haven't been, actually I've been involved in that in a while, but I took up bass guitar and harmonica and keyboard since then. I've been playing in rock bands, which is awesome. So that leads into what other art form would I really like to do. It's all kind of related. I love music. I love photography and imagery. I love imagery. What combines those two together? Music videos. I would love to direct and make music videos. That would be a dream job to me.
Yeah. Now, would you like direct it and star in it? And
Oh,
no, you wouldn't do it all. You'd
I just do the directing part. I'm not the star.
You just frame it. Very cool.
You know, come up with a concept and everything around it. Get some artistic people with their ideas and then go shoot it. That'd be awesome.
So JD's a trombone player. How many trombone players do you know? I mean, that's pretty cool. I like that. Third grade. Excellent. Okay. Danielle, I'm curious to know a little bit about your artistic process as well, because I know in your images you kind of have repeated figures, and I think it's you.
Yeah.
So I'm curious as to how you kind of, what's your concept kind of behind some of your work, especially the stuff that's hanging here.
So the three here that are in color with the multiples of me, those actually came out of technically and conceptually.
Yes.
Both? Okay.
Yes. Conceptually first, and then I want to
okay.
know how you do it. Yeah.
So those actually came out of a series that I did with double exposure photography, so everything was done in camera. It wasn't manipulated in Photoshop.
Oh, wow.
And that one was about mental illness, because I have an uncle and an aunt in my family who both have or had schizophrenia. And the age that I made those was the age that could come onto you, like if you were going to get something like that. And so I really wanted to experiment with what that feeling might be like if something like that started to take you over. So from there, I had the double imagery, and for those of y'all that don't know that, it would be like two people, but they would be ghostly. They wouldn't be solid figures. And so I really wanted the figures to be solid. So then I turned to Photoshop because that's what I wanted, them to look like. And I started bringing in the other solid people. And then the pieces became more about this idea of multiple selves. And there was a psychological study that I had looked at when making it, B.J. Sharma, I believe. And he did a study on this idea of multiple selves. And it's not a mental disorder. It's how most people think. And you have like this idea of yourself as like a private self and a social self, and then you can have all of these other selves, that you possibly don't bring out when you're in front of other people. And so after reading that, I really knew that that was me because, around my school friends, hey, I'm an artist. Around, people that weren't in college, maybe that I knew from high school, I'd never even talked about art, So it was interesting, all of these different roles that, you have to play. And even now, like a wife, a mother, employee, just everything like overtaking you. And then the idea behind those was that they were all fighting to kind of be this number one persona.
Like a
So
focal point. Right?
yeah, so in some of them, I think the ones out here, some of them are a little more, I wouldn't say brutal, but like controversial. The Tea Party one is probably the one where they're actually getting along. I call them they for some reason.
There's multiple.
Yeah, you know. I don't really see like myself in it, but anyways, that's a whole other thing. So technically with that in Photoshop, so I would set the camera up on a tripod and then I would shoot at the same time with the same lighting and everything, and I would just change positions, doing self-portraits, and then I would bring them all into Photoshop and kind of see which ones I thought would work best interacting with the others. And then using photo montaging, I would bring them in together into one image.
How many images roughly was there kind of like, would you do hundreds and kind of pick the top 3, or was it like?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I always shoot way too much, but I think working digitally, I allow myself that freedom because I started out working in film, and you didn't have that freedom, you know.
Like, woo!
Yeah, so with digital, and I tell my students that I'm like, shoot a million pictures, you can, you know, like there's no reason why you shouldn't be shooting that many. So yeah, I would say in a normal shoot, I would probably shoot anywhere from 100 to 300, just depending on what was happening.
Yeah. So I'm curious also to know, JD, for you still work in digital, and a lot of your imagery tends to be landscape-esque, or, you know, there might be a subject, like I love that hawk snake one.
Yeah.
So is there a particular location that you like to shoot, or is, you know, you said you love West Texas, are a lot of those kind of from West Texas, or?
Well, I spent 8 months working in Colorado Springs, and I had a lot of opportunity to get out to the mountains and the high plains in West Texas as I traveled back and forth. Like on the mine picture, I went out and I visited a lot of mines, took a lot of photographs, trying to get the right angle, right lighting, and everything. On the hawk, I'm an opportunist too.
Sure,
So
yeah.
I'm driving along, I see this hawk up on the telephone pole, and I stop and I take a picture of it, and it hops to the next one. I drive down there and take a picture of that one too. You know, I'm snapping photos, trying to get whatever I can of it. And then at the third one it flew to, it stopped briefly, and I drove down. And it took off again, and then I didn't realize the snake was in that photo.
Oh, wow.
But I got back and I looked at it, I blew it up, and I went, wow, there's a snake in there.
It's not in your booth, it's in the photo.
No, but the process was, I'm going to take as many pictures as I can of this hawk to get the best I can. And then actually you do luck out sometimes to get something like that. In fact, there's something else similar to the snake that happened to me in high school. I won an award at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, it was way back then. And it was a volleyball picture of this girl. I had to push the film because the lighting was low, so that means you put your you set everything higher and you process it differently, okay?
Okay.
So the ISO was up around 1200 or 1600, I can't remember, 1600 probably. So anyway, on this one picture, I was snapping a whole bunch of pictures at the beginning, right? This one picture, I wasn't zoomed in, but I got more of the net and the gym where the game was. And I got back and I developed it, and everything came out kind of grainy. And plus, in this one picture, the player, she was really little compared to the rest of the room. So when I blew that up, I didn't know what expression she had. She was hitting that ball with all her might, you know, and passion, right? So with the whole process and pushing the film, and with her being so low, and I blew it up to be 11 by 14, it was grainy. But if you look at the net and her face and the ball and everything, it worked out perfectly. And I couldn't have set up a shot like that.
Oh, yeah.
So I think for me, it's you have your subject, you take as many photos as you can of it, you go back to the editing room or dark room, see what you have, and pick out the best stuff that you have.
Very cool. I think we got a lot of great work out there, you know, for photographers that have done that. I feel really bad because I'm like, I've got my back to you the whole time. I promise it's not personal. I just can't, I don't have a 360 head, right? So I'll keep looking. I think we have time for maybe like another, ooh, wow, yeah, it's already 8:10. So let's do one more question, and then we'll kind of end on that note. So what are your, I'm torn. I'll give you an option. How about this? Either answer, what are your future photography plans? Like, where do you kind of see yourself in the next year, 5 years, whatever, with art making and photography? Or, what is one thing about photography that you would like the public to recognize or acknowledge, or something that you feel passionate about in terms of promoting the medium that is photography? So, either one, both, if you can do it quick.
I think as far as what I want people to know about photography, is that the question, right?
Sure, yep.
I think since, like, I didn't come to know fine art photography until 2002, whenever I first started college, and so for me, like, seeing that for the first time and knowing that I didn't have that, you know, since I grew up, like, that's the main thing, like, just knowing that photography can be more than, you know, something on Instagram. Not that Instagram isn't great. There's some really great photos on Instagram. But, you know, there's photography out there that can move you. And, like, when I saw Robert Park Harrison's work, like, I went home and I looked at more of it, and it brought me to tears, you know, and nothing had ever moved me in that way. And so I think to be able to try to instill that passion and try to let someone else, like, have a connection with a piece of art like that would be really amazing.
Almost like expressionism, to be an expressionist photographer, or kind of identify, maybe.
Yeah, definitely.
I think the one thing I would like to share about photography is that it's probably the most versatile medium that you can come at. I mean, it's accessible to everyone. You can do it with a phone, with film, with a professional camera. And you can get similar outcomes, but they're all a little bit different. And I think that also different subject matter. I mean, just approaching photography in your own creative way and finding what you like to take pictures of would be the most important thing. I mean, I didn't find it until way after I'd taken 70,000 pictures, and finally found what you like to make. And I guess future goals, I work with inner city kids in Dallas, and hope to be part of the nonprofit arts that's going on in Dallas, and all that's going on there, and maybe partly art education. So we'll see.
Well, the main thing about photography, I think I mentioned before, was it's a process, but sometimes you get lucky. So you have, I'm serious, you have your process, you have your technique and everything, and a lot of it's just being at the right place at the right time and knowing where that is. And the other thing about, I'm going to stay active and get more involved in the community and submit my work to more shows like this.
Excellent. Well, y'all, can we give a hand to our three panelists? So, we're now at the part of the program that probably most of you are actually sticking around for. I mean, we like to think that everybody sticks around for an educational panel discussion, and maybe some of you actually do. But I know you're really here for the awards, right? So, we had three jurors. We had Kelly DeLay, who does the Clouds 365 project. We had Irby Pace, who's a local photographer. He's been written up in the Dallas Observer, and he teaches in Dallas. And we also had Kelly DeLay, Irby Pace, Jerry Burns, who works for the city of Frisco and is also an avid photographer on the side. So all three of these people looked at the work that was accepted into the show. Irby actually helped curate some of the work, kind of pick which photographs would actually make it in. I think we had over 86 submissions, so we narrowed it down to about, I think there's roughly 40 to 50 pieces out there in the gallery. But I was pleased with just kind of the scope and breadth of photography that we had. So anyway, these guys came and they looked at the work and they judged and selected their top three. So here's how I kind of calibrated or figured out who the winner is. So if they selected an artist and their piece in first place, then that artist gets 7 points. Second place gets 5 points. Third place gets 3 points. And then if they mentioned them as like, oh, I also love this piece, but I just, I had to go with these top three, then they would get 1 point for that. An artist would get 1 point for that. So based on that tallying system, we have an award winner. So I'm going to kind of start low and go high, if that makes sense. It's because I like to mention, some of the photographers' work that I'm looking for. Here we go. Here's this is important. Okay. One of the artists' work that we had was Peter Hyatt. He got 6 points for his work. He got an honorable mention and a second place from one of the judges. We also had a girl named Leah Clausen. Her untitled number 1, it's kind of this image of a female. It's out in the main gallery near the black and white. She also got 6 points because she got selected by one of the jurors in second place and also an honorable mention. So those are our 2 honorable mentions. Peter Browning, your work got selected by one of the jurors in one of the spots, but unfortunately it wasn't across the board. So you were noticed, but not, unfortunately, I can't give awards to everybody. So what I'm going to do is I'm kind of going to announce like our second place that we don't have a prize for, and then I'm going to announce our first place that we do have a prize for. But, okay, so let me just do that. So our second place that we don't have a prize for actually goes to Danielle Curry. She had 11 points. So she was chosen first place, third place, and she got an honorable mention. So jurors really liked your work.
Thank you.
Yeah, so congratulations, and I wish I could give you something more than a smile and a
Hey.
atta girl.
A line on my resume.
There we go. Yep. And then first place, all 3 of the jurors picked her pieces. 2 of them picked the same piece, and 1 picked a different piece. And she had 13 points. You can see second and first were pretty close. Was Lisa Allen. And I don't know if you've been out here, but she did the piece that it's of the balloons. I think it's called like 99 Balloons. So that was one of the pieces. And then 2 of the jurors picked the piece right next to that, which I think is called Onto the Abyss. You can't tell if you're looking down or looking up, but it's just this really crisp, clean image. Anyway, so she won first place. My understanding is she actually lives in D.C. She's going to school out there, so she wasn't able to be with us tonight. But we can give her a round of applause, and you can all see her lovely certificate. It acknowledges that she got the Sky High Best of Show Award. I'm cheesy like that. I like to come up with things that relate to the theme. So this is her certificate, and she also gets a cash prize as well. So we will get that to her. So anyway, that's all that we have in terms of programming for tonight. If you have any questions about the gallery or the other types of things we do here at the Frisco Discovery Center, feel free to talk to me. I can give you brochures, I got literature, whatever you need. If you want to sign up on our email, you're certainly welcome to do that. So thank you so much for coming and supporting and promoting the arts here in Frisco. Come back and see us. We do gallery receptions once a month. Shows change out every month. And go finish off the snacks, enjoy yourself, and